Welcome to the Well Teachers podcast. The general philosophy around here is that when we feel well, we are more likely to teach well. In other words, well teachers teach well. This podcast isn't just about mastery of teaching and facilitation skills or about growing our careers in education. It's also about feeling well, being in good company, and having a bit of fun while we do so. My name is Sumbula. I'm also known as Sumbul, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get started. In my work as a teacher, there were at least 4 things that used to keep me up at night. And a couple of these have really followed on throughout my career. They've been a challenge, whether I've been a full-time teacher or just working in corporate or in an organization. Some of these they've just been always there. So the first one is safeguarding. When I taught in a mainstream school, I began to feel really troubled by cases and ethical dilemmas that had me feeling triggered or powerless because I couldn't really do anything about what the children I was teaching were experiencing at home. And in a school, I think it's quite under-explained how much safeguarding and social care work is involved, especially in the primary section, and it's quite a big thing. So it's one that if you're not really ready for, or if you're not sure how to handle it and you haven't done much social care work before, it can really catch you off guard. So it did for me. And I was never really quite sure who or if I could speak about issues ethically without various spiraling consequences and things like this. So safeguarding was the first one. The second that really kept me up at night were the unreachables. So these were students I couldn't really reach. So no matter what I was doing to differentiate, no matter how I kept staying after school and putting in the extra hours and creating extra materials for them and keeping them with me in their learners' breaks and catching them up whenever I could, I just couldn't reach certain students. And it really, really got to me. And I used to get frustrated, and I could see the students were getting frustrated as well. So this was a big one. So the unreachables was the second thing. The third thing that used to keep me really, really up at night was burnout. So especially during a first year of teaching that year, which I was in a mainstream school, I had no energy and no capacity for life outside of work. So burnout was a huge thing for me. It was constant and persistent all the way through my experience teaching in a mainstream school. And I was really trying my best to grow professionally and personally, but I really didn't have the energy to pursue anything outside of teaching hours. So it really felt impossible for me to have some kind of life. And partly as well, it's because I think financially, teaching, and at least at that time, my salary wasn't huge. And sometimes you are paying as well for the course you're doing. So you have very little budget to spend. And when you are pinched is a really good way to describe how you feel in your day-to-day life. You feel pinched in all areas. I felt pinched. I had no spaciousness to really move around the way I wanted to with my time and even with my students. I felt really constrained by all of the really rigid structures and schedules, and that didn't really give me a lot of space and time to manage my energy well. So if I didn't feel well on a particular day, I still had to go in and show up and deliver as well as I could for students. And on those days where I had very little energy for myself, let alone for anybody else, it really felt like it impacted the lessons that I was delivering. And then politics is the fourth one, the fourth major thing that used to keep me up at night. I found it just really difficult to understand different power plays and power dynamics going on in a work setting when I, always felt like education or non-profits, they wouldn't be affected so much by workplace politics. Naively, I used to think that. But in fact, I've since learned that politics is absolutely everywhere. It's all about power, and it's all about human beings who are working together or have to work together to organize time, resources, money. And it's all about who decides how and in which way those resources are distributed and used, basically. And as a teacher, you are one of those resources. I hate using the term for humans for us, but that was really how it began to feel, and it can feel like that sometimes in big organizations as well. You'll find this, I suppose, when you think about having to ask for time off or having to ask for time to rest, having to ask for some basic well-being needs. It can be so political. So those are the four things that really kept me up at night. Let's summarize. It was safeguarding and child abuse issues, unreachables, burnout, no energy, and really difficult politics at work, no matter if I was teaching or if I was just working in education. So, since having this opportunity to work in these different spaces and work in full-time mainstream education and work in corporate education as well, it's been a few months since I have started working purely on teacher well-being. And here is kind of the four things that I have found so far are very key to helping any school or any system or any organization really take care of teacher well-being. So these are the four things that I really feel have been helpful in setting up for the teachers I've been working with in the last few months at Well Teachers. And I feel that they're useful for anyone working in a school specifically to think about putting into place. So I will share each one, and I will share a question that you can ask yourself about how you might avail or get each one to make sure that you're being supported with your well-being. So the idea here is you need some nudges, you need containers, you need systems, and you need tools. And we'll go through each one. So the first thing is nudges. So in the same way that we consistently nudge our students, we make sure that they're getting things done in a way that helps prepare them. We can see the longer term vision. We can see where they're going. Maybe they can't, but we can. So we need to nudge them from time to time to just help make sure they're taking care of the things they need to do. So things like cover letters for an application or anything like that. We nudge the students. We see their plan and we nudge them. So nudges I've been putting in place at Well Teachers, they might be the ping that you get to maybe join a monthly well-being session with me, where we touch base and we go through our personal documents and our personal finances as well. And this, it seems so mundane, but it's so important. And if you think about it, as teachers, we spend a lot of time simply nudging students to do things and to get things done. And even during a lesson, you're basically providing nudges and prompts to your students. You're seeing where they are and you're seeing where they need to go, and you're nudging them and prompting them. So nudges is the first one. So a question for you: how does your school or your community, and how do you nudge yourself to take action on your personal or professional development? For me, I also add these calendar dates with myself into the calendar. So I add these month-end touch-base sessions with myself, meetings with myself to check in on different areas of my life. So it can be as simple as that. So what do you do for nudges to make sure that you're prompting yourself to take care of things in your life? That's the first one. The second one is containers. So containers are spaces, I would say events, they're containers to help provide learning or experiences around a specific topic. So a good example of a container is a workshop, maybe at the beginning of the year, that helps cover Safeguarding 101, updates teachers on a specific skill or updates to a policy or something like this. It's an experience around a specific topic. It's designed to get you, focused in that space. So a container can come in many different forms. I think that at Well Teachers, we have lots of boutique or bespoke workshops on different topics that are designed specially for a school. Inside the membership at the Well, we have a space that has a private forum for learning about how to navigate current world issues, especially relating to decolonization and genocide, which is a very distressing thing for teachers to need to navigate, and students too. We cannot switch off from it, and I would argue we shouldn't switch off from it, but it can be very triggering and it can be very difficult to manage what's going on. So having a container, a safe private forum to be able to offload, to talk about this topic, to get support with how you talk about this topic with students, this is really important. So a container is something that is really important to have in place for well-being, your personal well-being too. So I would say also a container is a therapy session, a counseling session, a coaching session. Everything is contained in that time with that coach or that therapist or that counselor. So for me, the counseling session and the coaching session, that would have been something that I really should have taken up during that year of teaching, where I was really struggling. I was really struggling specifically with safeguarding issues that I had ethical concerns about. I wasn't sure how I could talk about them. For me, I think a container I needed at that time that I didn't have was access to really understanding and suitable and appropriate counselling and therapy. That would have been really, really helpful. Sometimes you just need someone to hear and see you and be able to talk through it safely without worrying that it's going to affect your reputation or the children's parents or anything like that. So containers, so important. And a less heavy container might just be, like a career container. So for example, a question that I'm often asked a lot is, can you take a look at my CV? How do I find a job? How can I move internationally? This kind of needs its own container. It's not that straightforward to just share your CV with someone and get advice on it. Feedback is actually very difficult to get, like good feedback on your CVs, on your cover letters. And schools themselves internally don't always have the capacity to help you do this. It's an area that you have to take care of yourself with your career. So having a container to really help you work on your CV, work on your cover letters, navigate your career, do a decision matrix, which is all these are all things that I've created containers for inside the membership at the Well. This is also really valuable. So for well-being specifically, as you know, your career affects your well-being. Work is a very important part of this whole well-being puzzle. So what kind of containers do you have in place, or does your school have in place to help you set up for focusing and learning about specific things? What do you do to contain an issue that you're working through or a topic that you're working through? So we've covered nudges, we've covered containers. The third thing that I feel is really, really vital for well-being in a school or educational organisation is systems. I think in education, on a broader sense, the struggles that we face in education are because, despite great ambition, the educational system as it is what we keep falling to. So while I cannot and you cannot probably do anything about educational systems, especially in mainstream settings, we can do something about creating systems for ourselves and creating systems for making sure that you have a touch point, for making sure that you have the support in place. And when I was teaching, I really, really needed a better system for taking care of myself. So how do you do this? Some systems that I've started to create at Well Teachers, they are things like the wellbeing curriculum, a curriculum in place that provides topics and sustained learning, like a structure throughout the year to lean on, is part of a system to make sure that we have fixed gatherings each month that teachers can always go to, a bit like a well. So in many ways, the system that I've kind of put in place at Well Teachers, especially for the well, is a little bit like having that public park almost, if there was a metaphor for it, a public park that you know you can go to, and you know that you can find friendship, you can find support, you can find connection there. And then there's a special place inside called the well that you can dip into and extract things from to help you as well. So a public park is a kind of part of a society's system. Parks are a place and space where societies come to enjoy and take care of each other as well, to give parents a break from children playing at home. They can go and play at the park. I hope you get the idea. So what systems do you or your school have in place to help make sure that you're having the support and the professional and personal development and growth opportunities through the year? It can take some deep thought and a lot of work to get this in place. So for me, when I was teaching, I really, really needed a better system. I needed a better support system for making sure that I was okay when I was teaching my year ones and getting very, very burnt out in the process. So let's move on to the last one. The last one is tools. So with well-being and personal development or personal growth, tools are really vital. So tools can be anything, in my view, from books to workbooks, worksheets, courses, video tutorials, anything that helps you get a handle on or really get to grips with your well-being and what you need. So again, in terms of Well Teachers, I draw from the experience over the last few months. I've been sharing lots of different bundles of resources like financial workbooks and the Figure Yourself Out workbook to help with really getting to grips with values, with money, and even identity. So working through identity issues is not that straightforward. You need some tools, you need some prompts sometimes inside the tools to help you think about things like identity, all of which affect your well-being, in my view. What kind of tools do you have in your life or at your school that help you the most with your PD, your professional development, or your personal development? For me, at my school, there were occasional workshops and facilitators who used to come in and do certain well-being topics and deliver on those. So I really found those helpful, and some rolled their eyes at such workshops, but occasionally we would get a really awesome speaker in and I would get totally inspired, and I would rely on some of the tools or the books that came out of that to help me. Other books that I found really helpful and that I was reading around the time of teaching my year ones were Things like Stephen Covey's The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People was a book that I just kept rereading, and later I relied on The Values Factor, which is another great book that helped me eventually develop the process for what I now call Figure Yourself Out. We are coming up to the end of this podcast episode, which has been all about 4 things that kept me up at night. So that was safeguarding, the unreachables, burnout and politics, and 4 remedies that I think would have helped me that I've put in place now, and I'm working with teachers to put in place in the longer term, which is nudges, containers, systems and tools. I really hope that you found some of this helpful and that it helped you think through some of the ways that you can take care of your own well-being this year. At the start of the year, for many of us, not all of us, but many teachers around the world are getting into the school spirit. Back to school season has very much begun, or is about to begin come September. So I really wanted to put these questions out there for you ahead of the year and to let you ponder on them and think about how you're going to be making sure that you are well taken care of through the year. I'll be posting this podcast episode in the free podcast area at the Well Teachers free network area. So if you wanted to talk to me about the things that I've shared today or follow on the conversation, I'll be posting in there, and we can carry on the discussion. And now, as is tradition in this podcast so far, we are going to move into some updates and news flashes from around Well Teachers. So let's dig into those. All right, so in the Well, which is our private membership for teachers worldwide, we have our upcoming PD workshop of the month for members that is all about office politics this month and preparing yourself in various ways for the politics, inevitable politics that's going to be happening in any organisation. And our month-end wrapper for members is also coming up at the end of the month. That will be really welcomed for me as well. So it's my favourite for getting everything organised, for having a cup of tea with members and a chit-chat and reflecting on the month that has gone and the month to come. And we often do a guided meditation at the end of that session too. So I'm looking forward to that. In other news, we have some open events coming up in September. Those will be open to non-members, so stay tuned. One of the first is about motivating and inspiring students, and I'm going to be leading that and announcing the other speakers coming up too. So keep an eye out on those. And you can hear about all of these things through LinkedIn. I often share there, or through the website, which is now set up at wellteachers.org. And you can just also, if you want to join in with the free network, you can register and log into the free areas, which also has a podcasting area that you can talk to me about this episode on, because it will be posted there. So if you wanted to continue the discussion, I'd love to talk to you more about the ideas shared in this episode. I think that's it for now. If you're still listening all the way down to this part of this podcast, I am in Chitral these days, as you may know, and I'm working from here, and the weather is still quite hot, so it's very hot but very beautiful. And something fun I've discovered about being here is how useful everything is. So nothing goes to waste. And also, any gadget that I've ever bought in my life, ever, seems to have come into its own since I brought it to Chitral. So living rural and living in a mountain area, gadgets come in very, very handy. And I'm just so delighted that all of my gadgets have come into their own since being here. So with that thought, from the mountains, I'm wishing you so much good energy and a great rest of your day wherever this has reached you. Bye for now.